Good morning, Jane.
Good morning, Paul.
Thank you for joining me today. I was really interested to hear more about the work you do and how we can help you with the platform here today. So
Thank you.
School Readers is a charity. How long have you been? When were you set up? What kind of work do you do?
We were set up in 2013, and we provide volunteers to go into a local primary school to listen to children read. Because there's a real issue of many children, 1 in 4, sadly, in this country, leaving primary school not reading properly.
Wow, 1 in 4. That's quite shocking, really, isn't it? So I guess it's, and particular, obviously, pressures this year with the amount of time they've had off school, what we've had to go through.
Exactly. So school closures haven't helped, particularly those children who maybe their parents don't speak or read English. Obviously, they aren't able to help their children at home. And then there's a lot of children who don't have either Wi-Fi or the hardware in their home, so that if they were being taught virtually during school closures, they couldn't access that properly either.
Yeah,
So we've got a huge increase in demand for our volunteers in schools now.
I can imagine. So it's kind of taken the plaster off of some things, hasn't it, in terms of where the gaps are in terms of improving connectivity, but also how much we need to work together to improve things, really, in lots of different ways and lots of different
Yes,
organisations.
yes. And it's actually been very interesting because there's, as well as a surge in demand from schools, we've also had a surge in people coming forward wanting to volunteer. I think there has been a change over this period of people really wanting to help their local community.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the big positives that's come out, hasn't it? Is the need to want to. We're all in. It's a great leveler, hasn't it, in terms of everybody in the same boat, everybody wanting to. It said that here locally in Somerset, the different Corona sort of support groups of people, like you say, volunteering to want to help, and it's
Yeah.
kind of when we've been kind of like stuck in our homes for a while, it's almost sort of bound us together digitally in terms of people wanting to help, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's and that's one of those silver linings that have come out, I think.
Yeah. So is a national charity?
We're a national charity, so we've been going 7 years now, and we were started to because the situation of children leaving primary school not reading properly was such an issue, and obviously, if a child leaves primary school not reading properly, they can't access their secondary education fully. So it's really important that at that point a child can read well, because otherwise they won't get the opportunity to catch up on learning to read, or unlikely to, and then that has an implication on their whole life opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things is what has happened this year is when people had more time back to do the simpler things like enjoy playing a board game or reading or more family time. It kind of hit home the onus, didn't it, on how crazy our lives are these days that we don't. Lots of people's solution is to chuck an iPad in front of a child because they're so busy doing various things. And I think lots of us in different ways can be a little bit guilty of that. I wondered in terms of reading, the importance of reading. Have you seen lots of issues with technology that's kind of not, been a sort of a poor substitute in terms of people taking the time to read with the child?
Um, I think people have given more time to it in many instances, and you hear stories of children maybe where they have got the Wi-Fi and the hardware of reading to their grandparents over Zoom or something.
Yeah.
And I think because parents have been at home more, I think there has been a bit. It varies, it's all an individual circumstance. And you were mentioning about iPads, and that's also fine. You can read. It doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be a page. Um, but obviously, sharing reading is very important. Making reading an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and I guess it's also the storytelling element of people, keeping those stories going that have evolved, and it's great to see children that still reading Roald Dahl, and a huge variety of different books and authors. And during lockdown, we had a look at, we've passed down lots of our books that my two girls have now passed down to my nieces. And my youngest niece, she's sort of 18 months, well, coming up to 2 years actually this year. But to see her, because we had much more time with family, she's learnt so much more reading and loves books of her older sister. So to see her, taking pleasure in early on, just in terms of associating words with pictures and that kind of thing from an early age.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that has happened more with more family time. Yes.
So, in terms of the charity and the work you do, so how many volunteers have you got at the moment?
We've got over 1,200 volunteers.
Wow. Okay.
And they, on average, they read with, when they were going into school, they were reading with 10 children on average each during a week. So that meant 12,000 children were being supported every week by one of our volunteers prior to lockdown.
Wow. So, how's that sort of translated to the digital side for yourselves in terms of how have you been able to use technology to bridge that gap at the moment?
Well, we were very fortunate because obviously our volunteers had to stop going into schools because many were closed. So there's two things we've done. First of all, we launched something called Schoolreaders Story Time, which was a lot of our volunteers. A lot of them are retired teachers, things, but you don't need to happen to be people who've wanted to go back into schools, and they read a story on a video. So it's a video story, and then we sent them to all of our. We have 1,500 partner schools, and they sent them out to the parents so children could enjoy them and uh, be supported in their reading and reading enjoyment at home. And then a lot of schools actually used it as a resource in school as well. So thanks to technology, we were able to continue supporting reading and reach a lot of children, thousands and thousands of children. And then the second thing we've also done is, again, like we're doing now, is we have started a digital volunteering. So whereas a volunteer cannot physically go into a school for whatever reason, they can, in some circumstances now, listen to children. So the children are in school, but the volunteer is at home.
Yeah, that's great. I say it's been looking at those opportunities, hasn't it? To use
Yeah,
technology to the advantage. Now
yeah.
we have with our magazines, we work quite closely with the Taunton Libraries, Somerset Libraries here, and I know that they've done a lot, been able to do a lot of the resources that I say normally people have obviously been into the actual library to use them, transferring that to online, and it's helped them in terms of engaging with people more, social media and the resources, the magazines and things that you can learn online and the tools that are there. So yeah, it's kind of upskilled a lot of us, hasn't it, in terms of technology, and moved us
Definitely.
along in terms of how we do things.
Yes, we did a survey. We kept very much in touch with our schools and our volunteers throughout school closures. And we did a couple of surveys about how willing they might be to move to a digital volunteering solution. And amazingly, of our volunteers, 70% said they would. And our volunteer profile is predominantly 50 up to 95 years old. And so it is the older, and yet I think exactly that. They have really upskilled and become more technically able during this time.
No, that's been great to see, and so particularly looking at Somerset, then in terms of what you're looking to
Yeah.
do here and build on, what are you looking for in terms of this wave, this part of the country, in terms of your charity?
Well, we need lots more volunteers, particularly in the towns. But actually, we've got schools spread. 1 in 7 schools in primary schools in Somerset have registered with us asking for volunteers, and so we need at least another 200 volunteers. They're asking for another 200 volunteers. We already have 76 registered volunteers, so we need another 200. So
Right.
in order to volunteer, you don't need to be qualified, or you've got to have good command of English, written and spoken. And we do ask for a minimum of a year's commitment because
Yeah.
it takes time to build build a relationship with the children, and the long-term volunteering benefits both parties, actually, not only the children and the school, but also the volunteers get such a lot of pleasure out of seeing the difference that their time makes.
Yeah, that's great. So in terms of people getting involved, we can obviously share the details for that. And yeah, it's very
That would be
rewarding.
wonderful.
I've worked with lots of different schools and colleges, kind of secondary upwards. But even with that, it's very rewarding to say build up that rapport with somebody, see them grow as a person, learn new skills, even with sort of mentoring and things like that I've done. It is great, and learning such invaluable skills that that, as they say, they're so important in any profession that you go on to do, but in life in general, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, our volunteers are really opening up life opportunities for their children that they support.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Well, thank you for joining me today. We can share some more details about how people can get in touch, get involved in Somerset. Some lots more volunteers, I guess, and also the schools as well if they're looking to engage and
Absolutely. Yes.
increase the numbers there. So, thank you, Jane, for joining me today, and we'll share this video. And all the best with the continued work of the charity. And look forward to catching up with you very soon.